I am here with the group for DevXP.ca. This is a group of guys that I met recently in the Discord channel at Learning Terraform. And Derek actually approached me and said he had a project that he wanted to share with the community and see if there was an interest in learning about what the program did and how it might help other Terraform users like myself and everybody else on that group learn Terraform as they are taking advantage of their product to use Terraform. So great opportunity. The tool's written in React and Node.js, so pretty accessible, I think. And we just wanted to take this opportunity to talk to this crew and find out a little bit more about their product and how they came together and take a look at it for that matter. We'll start off with some introductions. So Brennan, take it away.
Yeah, so my name is Brennan. I'm a university student at the University of Victoria. I'm studying computer science at the Faculty of Engineering and Computer Science. Also outside of school, I work for a marine security and technology company here locally in Victoria called Barnacle. So I do DevOps, cloud infrastructure, full stack, all that kind of stuff.
Appropriately named, I'll add, Barnacle.
Yes.
All right, and Keanu?
Hi there. My name is Keanu Enns. I'm a master's student at the University of Victoria in computer science in the area of graph analytics and algorithms. And I'm open to all sorts of different areas within computer science, not just those, not just the graph algorithms. But I'm looking forward to talking about DevXP and looking forward to see how its future unfolds.
All right, and Derek, we'll get to your cat later, but first let's start with Derek.
My name is Derek. I'm a master's student at the University of Victoria, just like Keanu. I'm not studying graph analytics. I'm studying human-computer interaction. And Brennan beat me up for the job at Barnacle a few weeks ago. So we are both teammates and competitors.
Yes. The bitter rivalry begins. Great. Okay, so I did tell everybody that it's devxp.ca. Obviously, the .ca is Canada for the University of Victoria, but what about DevXP? Where did that name actually come from?
I can take that unless one of you guys wants to start.
I think you're a good one to choose.
Yeah, we kind of stumbled into it. Originally, when we started, obviously, this whole project came out of a university course that we're all attending, which is where we all met each other. Sure, we'll get to that later. But originally, in this course, the objective was to create a technology-focused startup centered around a product. And originally, after we kind of all met up and formed a team, what we were looking into was kind of automating developer experience tooling, such as linting and deployment pipelines, CI/CD, that kind of stuff. And our idea was, okay, we'll create a simple GUI and it'll generate these configuration files, which are really hard to write yourself. You know, your ESLint.rc file, and that's so annoying and causes all the problems, right? And quickly into that, while we were actually reaching out to users and saying, hey, like, is this a thing you'd actually want? Really quickly, we got the feedback of, I guess, but I don't really care, right? And we were like, okay, well, maybe not. But I kind of got mentioned to us that, hey, what I would really love, though, that's kind of similar to that, would be a GUI over top of Terraform, because Terraform is super hard, quoting them. Relatively speaking, yeah. And so we thought, okay. And at that point, our name was, I think it was Developer Experience as a Service, because we were thinking about kind of general developer experience tooling. And from there, we kind of narrowed it a bit more towards DevX, kind of DEVEX, something like that. But then when we were actually, funny story, hunting around for a domain, DevX was not available, or at least not available for a price that some kind of young entrepreneurs like ourselves could afford. So we were looking at kind of similar
Always
domains.
Looking for angel investors, right? So you can buy that domain name.
There you go. I'll make sure to pitch that.
Yeah.
But very quickly we found DevXP and we thought, okay, that's pretty similar. And we started getting into some motifs about kind of the phrase XP, and one of our designers and front-end developers, Sabrina, who's also an artist, was thinking about doing a bunch of art for our site. And she was thinking of kind of a level up pixel art kind of theme. And we thought that kind of tied in with DevXP. So in the end, we went with DevXP, partially so we could get the devxp.ca domain. Yeah.
serendipitous in the end, and that worked out
Yeah.
great. So it's kind of funny because when I originally saw the name, I was thinking XP programming, which is
Right.
sort of contradictory to what I assumed that you probably were, which is certainly much more agile. But I don't know if you followed any type of methodology. So we can kind of lead into what brought you together, but you mentioned that this is from the Startup Programming class project. I obviously you worked together in this. I don't know if you knew each other before that, but what was there a programming methodology prescribed to you within that class?
Well, I mean, it's quite agile in the sense of there was only a few weeks between deliverables, and the course required that we got a lot of user feedback. Just being very iterative. Every week we'd be reassessing what features we're actually working on. So quite agile in that sense. We certainly didn't have a big waterfall plan of how we were going to set it all up. So
yeah, definitely. It was definitely agile, but we didn't follow too strict of a software lifecycle methodology, just because our deadlines were so fast. I mean, from idea inception all the way through talking to users and kind of planning and executing and building a prototype and cleaning it up, all of that was maybe 8 weeks or so. So there just wasn't the time to kind of put too much work into a too strict of a methodology. So we did follow definitely agile, and we had weekly design meetings and whatnot, but it was kind of make stuff quickly, and when things break, we'll deal with it then.
I mean, agile can apply to your process just as well as it can apply to your programming, right? And this is what I like to prescribe or like to define as little a or big A agile. So I would say that you guys followed little a agile, just like the concepts were there, if not the formality of it. And I think that's actually great practice. So is this class, in fact, how you came together, or was there something else?
Well, I had worked with Derek beforehand in a previous course, and I enjoyed working with him. So I knew when it was time to kind of get teams together, I went to him and said, "Hey, you want to keep working together?" And then we just scouted out the other people based off their portfolios and did a bit of background research on people.
So all the kids lined up at recess, and you had to pick who was going to be on your team. Oh, this is so hard for me. I remember this very well. Okay. But Brennan made it in the end. So, and
we're so glad
what can I say?
We're so glad that Brennan came in.
And so we have 3 of you present. Sabrina obviously is not here. Is there anyone else on the team that we should mention?
Oh yeah, big shout out to Chris and Sabrina for all of their help. This was a team effort, and everyone really pulled their weight.
Yeah, I would say that I would echo that our team is really strong across the board, and certain skills that Chris has on the kind of Git ops and even, I mean, his research has been in psychology at university, so he was really helped us in building kind of user personas and whatnot. And Sabrina as well, who's our rock star designer and graphic artist and all that on the front end. So yeah, our team is really balanced. There's kind of no one person who can do it all. But together we kind of cover the whole range from design, front end, outreach to communities, all the way to hardcore back end, cloud infrastructure, all that. So.
Yeah.
Right. And we got some sense of how this idea came about, but I'm guessing that there's a little bit more to that story as well. So you had said that there was obviously an evolution over the name, and then you had a very short time period in which all of this came together anyway. So what is the story for how this specific project came together that we now know as DevXP?
Yeah, I mean, I think, there were a number of factors, but kind of the original beginning to it was an experience I had where essentially at a past company I worked for, I was having to set up kind of identical developer tooling for a number of different projects kind of over and over again. So set up an automatic linter, commit hooks, maybe a CI/CD pipeline, and they were all essentially the same, right? Like, I mean, the default configuration plus a couple of requested, changes, the default kind of build and deploy SCP the files over kind of thing. But each one still took me a kind of dumb amount of time to do. And of course I was, getting paid by the hour at the point. So, it probably took me a week to do all this. And, when you add up the salary across a week, that's quite a lot of money for a very repetitive task. And of course, anytime you hear a lot of money for a repetitive task, you think, okay, well, there's a solution here in the software world.
Yeah,
and so we kind of went into it.
You as a person, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we kind of went into it with that idea. But then, yeah, it was just really talking to users and talking to people of kind of what they needed. And there were 2 or 3 independent people who unprompted told us, I would really like some GUI, some automation around Terraform, because, just there's a lot of repetitive stuff, but also a lot of just kind of hard stuff to get right, when it's not that there's a one solution to fit all, not at all, but there are patterns that can be applied, repetitively, that, there's kind of not one way to do things, but definitely some help that can be given. And it was actually quite a funny story. Right when we were considering pivoting fully towards Terraform and only focusing on Terraform, actually in a class lecture, we had some guests from a local tech finance company who we asked during the Q&A period, very blatantly, what parts of your software development lifecycle were hard and would you like help with? And they said, well, if you'd asked me 4 months ago, I would have definitely said Terraform. And our professor knew that we were thinking about pivoting, and she just burst out laughing, and there was just laughter around the class.
There's your answer, right?
Yeah, it was
the
put on
fates
a
have
platter.
aligned. Your destiny is sealed.
Yeah.
So kind of along that story, though, Derek, Keanu, had any of you had any experience with Terraform before this?
Not at all. No, I hadn't even heard of it before.
Really?
No.
Did you have experience with React at least, or Node?
Yeah.
Okay. So this was old hat. You felt more comfortable.
Derek had to learn a lot.
I can understand that. That can be challenging. But not having known Terraform, so were you really just sort of going in with some trust at all the people saying, yeah, this was something that we would need a lot of help in? Or did you have some inkling at this point of what Terraform did, what niche it served the community?
Yeah, so I mean, as soon as once the idea was brought to us, we did a bit of research, and so that looks a little bit difficult in terms of getting even just the basic resources set up, and I think going through that process, I mean, Brennan did a lot of the heavy work, and I'm not heavy lift in there, so I'm not going to try to claim like I did a majority of that, but I think I got a taste of the difficulty of setting up these Terraform files, and I think that what our tool does is really, really helpful.
And I think it's clear from what I've seen so far, you had to choose particular providers as well. So along your path to learning Terraform, were you also learning things like AWS or GCP?
Oh, is that for me? Yeah. Well, in my case, then I definitely was learning all of that stuff as we were going.
Okay.
Yeah, and if I may add to the point about kind of recognizing it as a problem, I was early in the process setting up our own cloud infrastructure to run our own application on Google Cloud, and I set it up using Terraform, of course. And I was essentially copying my infrastructure. Yeah, well, I mean, right? You got to run. If you're creating a Terraform automation tool,
this is great.
you got to be using Terraform, right? You can't say, well, we don't run our own infrastructure, right? But yeah, and I was essentially copying the infrastructure of a previous project I'd worked on, but I hadn't done that through Terraform. I had just done it straight through the GUI. And despite the fact that I knew precisely what I needed as an end result, because I had literally done it before, the process of kind of reverse engineering what Brennan of a year ago did on like what buttons I clicked and what exactly I did, enable and disable and whatnot was a nightmare. And it took probably a whole weekend of, 8 hours a day just to get it all kind of working and right. Whereas if I had done it with Terraform the first time, I would have just copied the files over and tweaked a few values and ready to go. And kind of right then I was like, okay, this is very clearly like the way forward. I'm never going to not use Terraform for cloud infrastructure ever again. And even more on top of that, if I can automate further and not have to rewrite Terraform files every time I change jobs or change projects or whatever, there's definitely there's room for a solution there.
Yeah, and you mentioned it earlier, right? The duplicity. You don't want to be duplicit with the actions that you take. It reduces your efficiency, gives you more hours of time that the customer ultimately may not be interested in paying for. And I can also admit that the Olaf of 1 week ago was so naive. He didn't know anything about programming or development. This week's Olaf, much better, improved. Okay, so that gives us some history, some precursor, but we probably want to get to a demo as well. So Brennan, I believe you have a demo to show us. Is that right?
Yeah, I'd be happy to take you around.
Okay.
Cool. So obviously, Derek and Keanu, if you guys want to talk over me at any point, totally feel free. This is our landing page at the moment. So we're at devxp.ca, and anyone is welcome to go to devxp.ca and try it out themselves. If I scroll down, we do have some information here just about DevXP, kind of a preview of what's to come. But I'm going to be showing you right away so I can get right to it. So the first thing we would do is to log in with GitHub. This is because DevXP will automatically allow us to connect to our GitHub repositories so that it can directly create pull requests on our behalf with the Terraform configuration files. So at the moment, we have one tool ready to go. Eventually, we plan to support maybe some other DevOps and cloud tools, but for now, Terraform is the way to go. And I'll just gonna reload the page here. My browser is being a bit funny in this mode. Anyway, so we come to our landing page now, or our tool manager page, I should say. Now, actually, you might on the first time actually see a slightly different page. You might see this one that's all bright, but obviously we're developers. We don't want to see this bright page. This is the one you can show to your project manager or whatever. Instead, let's swap this over to dark mode. So I don't have to pick it first. I could just jump right in with some settings, but I'm going to choose to pick a repository first. So this is a list of all the repositories which I could theoretically want infrastructure for. I'm going to just pick this test repository that I have set up. And one of the first steps would be to pick your provider. Now, eventually we do want to support an idea of kind of provider agnostic, where you can set up your resources independently. And then at the very last step, choose, okay, implement this with Amazon or Google or Azure. But for the time being, it's, pick a provider first. And you'll notice there's a little arrow over here. And if I click on this, it'll pull out a preview window where it'll actually preview a kind of generic, basic, preview of what code it is going to write on your behalf. And this is live updating. So if I change from Amazon to Google here, you'll notice that the specifics of the Terraform block and the provider block and whatnot have updated. And this is the kind of basic shell of what we're going to be working with. So for now, I pick Amazon.
And that kind of, if I may just interject there, like that kind of goes along with the empowerment piece of our tool, wanting to be able to, show people the changes live. As you make these tweaks, you can see the changes that are happening in the configuration file, and you can kind of piece things together and
absolutely
build up your understanding.
Absolutely.
And you said it's a live view. So to that point, and you can kind of show this as you go, but I'd like to see if it actually updates field level information as you're making changes to the form fields. But I also saw that you were able to highlight the section, so you can clearly just copy out of this and paste into the editor of your choice, for instance.
Yes.
Okay.
You totally could. I mean, we obviously encourage using the pull request features so that you could link this up with some CI/CD pipelines and automated testing and code review and all that. But if you wanted to play around with stuff locally, this could be a tool definitely to just quick start, drag and drop, copy paste into your editor, get started for sure. So if I add my first resource here on this big green plus, you'll see a list of the resources from AWS which we currently support. And this is a growing list. And if there are specific resources that anyone watching this really, really needs and would love DevXP to support, we'd be really stoked if you reached out to us and just said, hey, I really need this specific niche AWS resource, and I love using DevXP, or I'd like to use DevXP, but you don't support it. And we could discuss that, and we'd be happy to hear from you and to learn about what specific things you need and require. So for now, I'm just going to pick a virtual machine. And I get the option to customize or quick start. And all that quick start is going to do that's different is it's going to pre-populate some default fields. It's going to pick the hardware for you by default. And this is just to really streamline if you're trying out the tool for the first time and you have no idea, you just want to see how it works. You don't have to worry about making choices yourself to start. You can just get right into it. So if I click quick start here, you'll see that it has added a resource to our card, to our page, and it's also updated our file here. And if I click on this, it'll bring up the settings panel for this. And you'll see that we've really tried to abstract away some of the details and really only left the most critical and important decisions to be made. One of this would be the operating system it runs. So under the hood, obviously, this is going to be setting the AMI image, but we show a much more easy to understand option here, like Ubuntu server or Amazon Linux, instead of the very difficult to read AMI hashes. We can also pick our hardware here. So for now, let's pick medium with the 2 virtual CPUs and 4 gigs of RAM. And if we wanted to actually clone this resource and create multiple of them, there's a very quick, easy way to do that. And that's with the number of virtual machines over here. So what this will do is it'll simply take the settings of this resource and it'll create a bunch of clones of it. So if you need, in fact, 3 virtual machines, we can just say 3 here. And when I add these changes, you'll see that it's now populated 3 virtual machines, all with the same settings. Nice. Another thing that's quite critical is we have this little advanced options panel. And we intend with the advanced options that this is something where the defaults are best practice by default, so that if a user never touches these advanced options, they know that they're still getting kind of some best practice in their infrastructure. So the specific things that this would touch would be stuff like, should we put the resources in their own VPC? And then what kind of networking are we doing? So are we allowing you to SSH into resources behind that VPC? Are we allowing outbound web traffic? So can they access the internet, these virtual machines? And also some early prototypes for automatic load balancing. So if let's say I do allow SSH here, and I click out of this, if we look at our panel here, we'll notice that in addition to adding the specific EC2 resources, so where we have the AMI, we have the instance type, etc., we also have automatically a subnet and a public IP address associated with this instance. And if I do scroll down here, we'll notice that eventually, once I get down, we have all that networking information. So the subnet's been created automatically. The internet gateway has been created automatically. And the point of this is to to allow kind of these best practices where your resources are not just open bare to the public and all the ports are open and whatnot. And you'll notice that if I were to disable this option and turn off the VPC, right away our file is getting quite a bit lighter here, where our instances, if I scroll up, don't have those subnets and all that networking anymore.
That's really great. And so I doubt it does this, but I'm just curious, had you thought about providing the option to point to a pre-existing network rather than creating one? So using a data source, for instance, instead of a resource to create.
Yeah, definitely. Our system at the moment behind the automatic kind of security features and networking features is a bit primitive in that it's not expanded out yet towards all of those kind of use cases of, exactly, you already have a VPC, this kind of stuff. But we're definitely looking to increase its usability and increase the power behind kind of these automatic security and networking options. And we're looking for user feedback, because we really don't want to be putting lots of effort into a feature that people don't actually want. And so we would really love to hear from people if they see this kind of automated networking as something that they go, wow, that's super powerful. I'd love that, but it doesn't quite work for me. We'd love to hear about it, and we'd love to hear about how we could improve it. Exactly as you said, to support kind of, maybe you have your own
existing
VPC and whatnot.
Yeah, and Keanu mentioned it earlier. This is kind of an enablement feature. So if nothing else, it gives you an example of how one were to do this. And if you wanted to go in and replace that with a data source, it would be fairly easy for you to do so. And if not provided by examples directly, a quick search on the registry.terraform.io could give you a clue as to how that's done.
Precisely.
Yeah, I think that's really great. And I saw the dynamic nature of making changes to the GUI and seeing those changes reflected immediately within the text output.
Mm-hmm. Precisely, yeah, and definitely on kind of the learning side of things, even if you're not directly using this code for your production, at the very least, it'll point you in the right direction. Terraform has some really, really good documentation, but sometimes I found when I was learning it for the first time that I didn't quite know where to start always. I vaguely knew, okay, I need some security. I need like a VPC or whatnot, but what documentation page do I actually need for that? So with this, you might be able to say, oh, you see that by enabling, the VPC, you might be able to see, okay, well, there's this subnet ID field. Clearly, I need to know about that. And then you can look for that in the documentation and slowly build up a knowledge base and understanding for sure.
Yeah, that's great. And we actually spoke in one of our other episodes about probably the struggle that you had, like interpreting the documentation that Terraform has produced, that HashiCorp has produced. And without any experience with the product, with HCL, you don't know where to start. You don't know what terms you're searching for. You don't know the difference between a data source and a resource. And so we touched on some of those things, which we'll link a video here. But we touched on some of those things to help you get some idea as to where to start and what sections to look at to give you those fundamentals to help you understand the documentation. But this is great because this gives you tactical examples that you can put to use right away while you are also learning the documentation and researching, what all of these things mean.
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. If I may here, just before we wrap up our demo, I haven't actually saved any of my settings here. Obviously, I could have copy pasted them and done some stuff locally. But if I want to really take advantage of all the features we have, I'm going to want to hit this create pull request button here. And what this is going to do as it notifies is that it's going to create a pull request to a temporary, or it's going to create a commit, I should say, to a temporary branch of the repo that I picked. And it's also going to automatically create a pull request so that, maybe a senior developer, if you're a bigger company, or just yourself can review before you merge it into your actual product. So once I hit confirm here, it will create this pull request, and the GitHub API takes a second, but you'll see there our lovely success animation. And it's going to give us some information about what to do next. And so our next steps are going to be to check out or merge our pull request, and then of course run our usual Terraform init and Terraform apply. And if I click this here, it'll take me directly to the pull request that it created. And we can see the diff here if I go to file changed from how it was before, or whatever I had previously. And it's added in, these AWS instances and Elastic IP addresses, all the stuff that was shown in that side view. And this is another point on the kind of empowerment and teaching of DevXP, is that as your requirements change, these diffs will not be that big. If you just tweak one little thing to your requirements, you'll be able to very clearly see in this pull request the diff and kind of in your head logically understand, okay, so if I want to enable SSH, all that it's really doing is opening up a port on the subnet, something like this, right? And it kind of would enable that learning. And one final thing I'll show here, I won't do the Terraform init and apply in the demo, might take a while, but on the thing we mentioned earlier about kind of copying an existing configuration of infrastructure from one project to another that we wanted to help with was this copy to another repo button. And this is nice because what this will do is it'll essentially let me pick a second repo of my repos that I have available, and it will copy all the settings that I've set up here into that repo and make them available through a pull request, but also to edit through our dashboard. And this will hopefully allow people to jumpstart new projects using existing infrastructure configurations when they are starting new projects.
And when you say copy settings in this case, you're referring to the IAC code, right? Not just like the UI settings or anything like that.
Yeah. So what it'll actually do behind the scenes is it will copy the dashboard or the logical settings into the new repo, but it'll also create a pull request with the IAC code, the exact same as if they had set it up all from scratch and then hit create pull request to that repo. So it'll do both.
Okay, great.
Cool. Not sure, Keanu and Derek, if I've missed anything. And
I think you've covered it pretty well.
Yeah, I think one good thing to point out too is since this was a course, we had to write a pretty rich wiki as part of the marks. So there is our wiki available, but then also within the tool itself, you'll see many of these question marks that will try to explain what that specific setting is, along with a learn more link to the Terraform docs. I believe is where most of them go.
Yeah, some to the Terraform docs, some to our wiki, which is very, very rich, mostly filled out by Keanu, perhaps entirely filled out by Keanu.
Not to point blame.
Yeah. If it's bad, then it wasn't me.
Yeah. And similarly here, just as Derek said, we intend to try to help people who not only are learning Terraform, but also maybe they don't know much about cloud resources in general. And they know that they have an application they need to get running, but they don't quite know what they need. And we're hoping to not fully automate that for them, but at least help them along the way towards learning, okay, I don't know what EC2 is, but virtual machine sounds like what I need. So I'll get started with that.
That's actually very appropriate in the AWS world, because the naming is not necessarily intuitive if you are unfamiliar with that with that platform.
Precisely. I guess that would be it for their demo, but I would definitely encourage listeners to try it out. And we're definitely in a kind of prototype phase, so there will be things missing and things that you may desire that we don't have. And we would be more than happy for people to reach out to us. I'm sure we'll provide some contact information, maybe in the description. We'd be more than happy to chat about that and to learn about what you need from DevXP in order to make it really powerful and helpful for you.
So I might add here too, there's an easy tie-in. You have already gamified the interface with the whole notion of your design elements that you have. Clearly, you just need to add achievements now to this so that people can level up their progress and path. I think that would be a lot of fun.
You've connected a database.
Yeah, exactly. And then you don't say that it's prototype, you say it's early release. That's people excited.
Yeah, it's early access.
That's right.
Exclusive.
Release it on Steam. I'm sure it'll be a hit.
There you go. Cool. All right. I think we'll leave it there.
Great. Yeah, that'll work. So we've learned a little bit about your history, your progress. I would like to touch back on something real quick, because this was a classroom project, but as I understand it, you probably did not share a lot of time in an actual classroom. So is this basically the classroom? Is this it?
Well, for the first, sorry, I'll let Derek take that.
Yeah, it kind of started that way. So in January, our school was still under, there weren't any in-person classes. So everyone was trying to kind of network with the other students over Zoom to form teams, come up with ideas. And then after about 2 or 3 weeks of that, we shifted back to more in-person learning, with classrooms opening back up at the university again. But this course was unlike anything that I had ever taken before, in the fact that there was very little in terms of lectures, on a weekly basis. A majority of our course, the scheduled course time, was spent listening to other people's presentations on their products, listening to presentations from other startup founders. And then there was even days where our professor said, look, there's no class today. What I want you guys to do today is work on your projects. Because this is a time that I know you all have scheduled in your calendars. So there's no way that you can say that you're busy or whatnot.
Right there. Yeah. You take what was once a meeting and you reuse that for real work. Yeah. You'll also use this in your professional life if you are lucky and smart.
I'd almost say that the course was Y Combinator, but for university students kind of thing.
There you go. Yeah.
Very similar.
There's a lot of really awesome course mentors that were CEOs and CTOs of local startup companies, and it was just a great experience to be able to, get in touch with those people and hear a lot of their founder stories. And yeah, it's great.
That's awesome. Okay, so let's get into then your target audience. So you obviously were targeting people new to Terraform. It sounds like you might be targeting some business users. I'm not sure. Tell me about what your plans were for that.
Brendan, you want to take that, Brendan? Or?
Sure, I'm happy to take that. Yeah, I mean, we're obviously the easy thing to say is, well, we're targeting anyone who would find it useful. But definitely people who are learning Terraform, definitely people who are coming into it with this knowledge that IAC is the kind of right thing to be doing, but maybe who don't have the time or even perceived ability. They don't think, well, I don't think I could learn that. It's just a bit intimidating. And we're trying to say, no, you can learn it, and you do have the time to learn it, because we're gonna help you and speed up that process. So definitely people who want to get started with IAC and kind of get quick started a little bit, totally helping them. And whether that's in a personal context for their personal projects, or in professional, if they've been tasked with, hey, set up our infrastructure for our new startup in the cloud, and they go, well, I know that IAC is the way I should do it, but I don't really know Terraform. There's no problem with using it for for a production company. But we're also targeting users who maybe are used to the style of kind of a GUI and an automated experience in their cloud world. So I'm thinking of people who use Heroku, for example, and who don't know how to touch the internals, but they maybe want to. One person we spoke to kind of said, hey, I've always used Heroku, and I know that they're way overcharging me, and I would love to be able to kind of set up my own, bare metal cloud infrastructure, but it's just too much. It's too much to learn all about, AWS and IAC and all this. And I've heard of Terraform, but I don't have the time in the day. And so we're hoping to say to those people, well, we're going to make it just as easy for you as using your Heroku or similar kind of products, except you're going to actually get the benefits of an IAC file at the end, which is yours, and own your own infrastructure. Don't know if that kind of covers the segments, Derek or Ken, if you guys.
Yeah, I think that just on top of that, if I think this is kind of echoing what Brennan said, but if companies kind of their developers like using DevXP and they're happy with it, and there's features that we don't support, then we're happy to open connections with those companies and research and development for specific features that they want. We're open to hearing from those companies that want those features supported.
Yeah, definitely. We plan to support many features, but if a company needed a specific one fast tracked for their infrastructure, we'd be willing to discuss the financing of that for sure.
Nice. So I guess one other audience member of that then is the community at large. So is there intention or the idea of this being more open sourced, or at least community contribution enabled?
We haven't decided fully on that. DevXP is definitely a public project in the sense of it's publicly visible, and anyone can go check out our source code. We can link the GitHub repo. And if someone really wanted to contribute, we're not going to say no at this time, but we don't have the repository set up yet for kind of really encouraging contributions. And we haven't yet decided our route in terms of open source licensing and whatnot. That hasn't kind of fully been finalized, but we're mostly looking for kind of user feedback in terms of, hey, I really need this feature, and we're happy to build it at the current time, at least.
Okay, no, I think that's good. That's very thoughtful, because obviously you have to sort of weigh your own liabilities and risks. So I think that's good to have those thoughts in your mind. And I guess that really takes us into one of my final topics here, which is, where do you see yourself in the future with this? Where do you want to take it? Where would you like it to go? How would you like to see your baby grow up?
Well, yeah, I think that this has turned into a lot more than just a school project for us, and I think that we're really looking to keep it going. And maybe in the short term, it's just we're working on it on the weekends or after work or whatnot, and supporting those custom features. But we would like to see it turn into a viable business and a company. To be able to spend more time on it and focus on it. I think that's where I'm at with it, at least, and we still have yet to kind of discuss it once the course comes to its end. But yeah.
Okay. Anybody else?
Yeah.
Go for it, Derek.
I think that's exactly where we're at. The conversation has yet to be had, but all of the team is really interested in pushing it forward and continuing to work it off the side of our desk while we, finish grad school, or while we, after we graduate from our undergrad. Yeah. And what is there to lose,
Right.
Yeah, definitely. And we've received a lot of really positive feedback from across the board, whether it's kind of mentors in our course, from kind of local founders who've been through this whole process and are encouraging us, like, go for it, to users saying, like, hey, like, if you could support this other feature for me, like, I will ditch Heroku and, like, contact me, like, call me when you have it done.
Yeah, amazing.
All the way to investors who've said, I'm very interested in the progress of this, and let's open those communication channels. So future is really exciting, and we're all on board, I think.
Yeah.
And if nothing else, I presume that this stands as a resume builder for each of you. It's something you can point to that's live on the web. It has some users attached to it. There's even a video, I hear, about it on YouTube. So that's really great. You said before that we'll leave contact information for you for sure in the description. I also want to invite everyone to come and join us at Learning Terraform on Discord. All of these guys are there. I am there. I think there are almost 1,000 people on the server today, which is really great. We built it from a very small number to where it is now. And you'll be able to get in touch with all of these guys there, a whole community of other people that might be able to help you in your IAC or Terraform journey. And yeah, I mean, that's but one way to contact these and other people, and we'll have some of your other contact ways as well. Thank you again for joining me. Thank you again for bearing with some of the technical challenges that we face, and hope we can talk again sometime soon.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you for having us.
Yeah,
we really appreciate you speaking with us, and we enjoyed the conversation. It's always fun to talk about super cool technologies like Terraform.
To geek out on IAC.
Oh yeah.